Hi, Ayesha. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for taking this interview, for taking the time and effort. So, where are you calling from?
I'm in Dubai, so it's actually Thursday here in Dubai, so it's the last day of our working week. So I'm heading towards the weekend now, because obviously Fridays and Saturdays are our weekend here in Dubai. So just wrapping things up. It's 1 o'clock, so it's lunchtime. So I'll just be having some quick lunch, a few more meetings, and then it'll be the weekend for me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Ayesha.
I live here in Dubai. I've been working in the retail industry for 25 years, so wasn't a graduate in a fashion or retail or anything. I actually studied business studies and had a plan maybe that I would go into accountancy. Did some work experience in an accountant's office and realised just how boring that might be. So then came across in the university career centre a booklet on career opportunities in retail, and just thought, wow, this looks really interesting. It combines numbers, it combines fashion. I'd always been interested in textiles. I wasn't an artist or a designer, I couldn't draw, but I had an interest in kind of textiles. I'd always been into knitting and embroidery and crochet and all those things when I was younger. I liked dressmaking. And so I thought, wow, this, maybe this is the career path for me. So at that time, it wasn't really a big thing that people, knew about. So even when I spoke to the careers advisor at university, they were like, well, if you want to apply for it, it's fine. But, they don't come to this university. It's not, something we know much about. So I just kind of went off on my own and thought, this is what I'm interested in doing. And, lucky for me, I went into this career and not into accountancy, because I think this has given me a far more exciting life and opportunities than perhaps I would have had in the finance field. So yeah, no regrets from that perspective.
What was actually your first job?
So I think I was in university. I had a placement year. So actually I went for 1 year to Marks and Spencer's, and I worked in a trainee buyer position in Marks and Spencer's just for 1 year, then went back to university and finished my degree. And then when I graduated, I went to Next, and I was a trainee merchandiser. So by that point, I realised that merchandising was probably more me than buying. And I went in as a trainee merchandiser into Next. I think the only thing is probably that wasn't my first ever real job. So obviously from about the age of 14, I worked in various, shops, corner shops, or news agents. I worked in a supermarket as a checkout girl. So I guess the retail journey started even before that, long before.
So, Ayesha, you've been all around the world for your job. So tell us a little bit about that part of your life.
Yeah, I started my career in the UK, obviously straight from university, and worked for various retailers in the UK for about, if I graduated when I was 22, for about 8 years until I was about 30. So I worked for Next and Georgia Asda and Mothercare. And then obviously started to think about going to live overseas. I'd actually grown up in Hong Kong as a child, so I think that gave me kind of this expat, kind of itchy feet kind of vibe that I to explore the world. So I started to look at opportunities, and at that point in time, Dubai was, the booming place in terms of retail. All the malls were being built, all the brands were opening franchise divisions here. I'd done some work in franchise with Al Shire at Next and at Mothercare, so I kind of understood the model. I'd actually been to Dubai for the first time on a trip in, I think it was 1998. To see a Next store that was opening at the time, and obviously Dubai was so different then to it is now. So I've had quite a long connection with the Middle East and with Dubai. Got my first job in the Middle East and came out. It was actually with Landmark Group, who I work with now, who I came and joined them in the Middle East, actually on the same brand that I work on now. It was Max Fashions, which is where I work now. But at the time, it was a very startup brand. They had 5 stores. They were just opening the first stores, very small buying quantities, just really getting the team onboarded. And I joined, and I have to say at that time the culture was very different to how it is now. So coming from the UK as a woman into an Indian dominated company, I was very young compared to a lot of other people. It was quite a challenging move. And I think I did a pretty good job looking back. I don't think I obviously ran home after the first few weeks, which could have been maybe my instinct to go running home crying to the UK, but I didn't. I stuck it out, and I stayed with Landmark just over a year, and I think probably I would have finished the contract. I had a 2-year contract, and at that time it was very hard to break contracts in Dubai, so I would have probably just finished the contract. But I was approached by Gap. So Gap were opening in the Middle East. They had signed a franchise agreement with Altair, and they were opening their first stores in the Middle East. So I was approached for that role. And I think at the time, the brand Gap was just so, at that time, it was still very successful. It was really enticing as a brand. It was this new launch in the Middle East. We had, Maroon 5 and all kinds of people, so it was a big deal. And Altair as a group still are an amazing retail group. So it just was a great opportunity for me. So I had to tread very carefully, because obviously Landmark Group had brought me to the Middle East. I was tied into a contract with them, but I wanted to take up this opportunity. So very carefully, I kind of explained the situation and, the challenges that I was facing, and that this was something that I really felt I wanted to do. And thankfully, with their blessing, I then was released from my contract and I went to Altair. And obviously it's not stood in my way of returning to them, even though a lot of the same people in the family, are still there, that I think it shows that you should never burn your bridges, never make a mess of a relationship, like handle things really carefully, because in retail, you're always going to come across those people again.
How does your daily routine, do you have a routine? Do you get up in the morning? Do you exercise? How's your work-life balance?
I'm a very routine-driven person. So I wake up at 5 o'clock most days. And I do some form of exercise in the morning. I think I've learned over the years that if you get your exercise done in the morning, you never miss it. But if you plan to do it in the evening, something will come up, and it's not always work. It could be somebody asks for it to go for a drink, or you're just too tired. But I think if you can do it in the morning, you get it done. So 3 days a week, I have a personal trainer and do weight training. The other days, perhaps go for a long walk, and then at the weekends I try and do some Pilates and some yoga. So I try and keep a bit of a balance in terms of different kinds of exercise. Then come back from exercise, have some breakfast, have a shower. I'm pretty disciplined about not trying to check work emails until all of those things are done, and then I kind of switch on and I'm ready to go. And I think I found over the years that there seems to be some trigger point for me, that when I get into the shower and the water starts running, that's when I first start to think about work. And I never planned that, but it must have just happened on its own over time. So the first time I'll probably think about work is when I step into the shower, and I'll be like, okay, what's happening today? Or who have I got to look after today? Different, whatever comes to mind from the day before. So I'm pretty disciplined. I think I've learned over time to kind of really protect work-life balance. I think it's the most important thing you can do. I think being strict about your boundaries and protecting that kind of home time is important for you, but I think also you deliver the best results. I think if you really look at people who are not doing that, they're not delivering as good results as people who manage to do that. So I think it's really important. I follow it for myself, and I promote it and push it for my team as well.
What advice would you give to someone who's looking to follow in your footsteps?
I think, like we said before, getting that early retail experience is really important, kind of understanding what is it like to actually work on the front line, on the shop floor, I think. And that sort of starts to spark your interest about the whole world of retail and kind of customer behavior. Why do people shop in the way they do? Why do they do that? Even when I used to work on the checkouts, you'd be analysing somebody's basket to think, okay, what are they going to make for dinner with all these different things? So I think the other thing that I'd probably say is I think people get too hung up on education and what's the right qualification and so people will get hung up on, I need to do this master's in fashion management from such and such, or I need to get my MBA, or I need to. And I have to say, most of the most successful people that I know in retail probably have an education, a good education, but often nothing specific to the industry, and often not a very advanced education. So most people would have a degree, but equally I know a lot of people who just entered into retail working in a store, then went into head office in a first kind of allocator or assistant buyer role, and just worked their way up. So I think it's important. I think there are a lot of specific qualifications coming up now. And yeah, some of them are great, but I think don't get hung up if you're not from that background, or you don't have maybe the resources or the finances or the ability to go and do all these qualifications. Don't think that that means you can't have the career, because I think our industry is not really about, you know, somebody once said to me about doing an MBA, and I said, you could do it, but in retail, it's not really valued. Nobody even knows what it is.
What would you say was the best advice you've ever had?
I was thinking about this, and I think probably for me, it's trust your instincts. Like, I think sometimes a couple of jobs that I've taken, if I went back and looked at them where they didn't work out to be quite what I wanted them to be, and I've ended up moving on quite quickly, I knew instinctively that those jobs weren't right. And if I really was honest, but they seemed like great opportunities, or they were amazing brands, or, you know, one gave me the chance to move to New York, and it seemed, you know, too good to be true. But I think in both situations that I can think of, my instinct was telling me that's not what you should be doing. And I think you have to trust that instinct.
And how about the worst advice that's ever given to you personally?
I mean, I think it links back to what I was saying about work-life balance. I think when people say you have to work really hard to be really successful, I think it's not about working hard, it's about working smart. Like, really, for me, I'm always like, okay, what's the quickest way to get this job done most effectively, and learn a process or put a process in place to make that happen as quickly and efficiently as it can. So I think people will try to yeah, that's very smart. So I think people will try to say, oh yeah, you've got to work the long hours, you know, or you've got to do this, or you've got to, you know, work weekends. But I've never done that, just because I've always been, you know, that's not what I've wanted to do. So I've organized things and set things up so I wouldn't have to do that. So even I remember kind of really back in the early days when I was a trainee merchandiser, any task that I would have, whether it would be loading contracts or creating packaging presentation for each of the styles and things, I would learn how to do it as quick as possible, or make a quick workaround for, like, okay, if I do it once, then I copy and paste it here, then I do. So I think finding smart ways to make your life easier so that you don't, because working hard is not the answer. You know, it's just makes life difficult.
Thank you so much again.
Pleasure talking to you.